guys, before the next episode starts, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Now let's begin the next episode. Miss Lehan is shown sitting in her office, having called a student in to ask about Hyun, but instead of answering, the student looks at her with a serious expression and says, "Why are you? Stay away from him. You don't know anything about him." Miss Lehan frowns slightly, but the student continues, "Knowing too much about Hyun is the same as inviting death. Let me say it again, you will die if you keep asking about him." A slight sense of unease creeps into her mind, but despite that, she sits back and waits for Hyun to arrive. When he finally does, the camera first focuses on his feet. Stepping into the office, his face is not shown until he reaches her desk and takes a seat. Smiling slightly, he tilts his head and asks, "You called me here, but why?" Meanwhile, on the other side, Gamin is shown entering the girls' classroom. The moment all the girls turn and stare at him, he panics without saying a word. He immediately makes a U-turn and rushed out. Once outside, he takes a deep breath and turns to Sehon, looking frustrated. "What was the girl name again?" he asked. Sehon sighs and replies, "Her name is Lee Ji-yoon." Gamin still confused. "Lee Ji-yoon, what does she even look like?" Sehon rolls his eyes and says, "If you go inside and ask, obviously someone will point her out to you." But Gamin shakes his head, unwilling to go back in. Sehon, however, is not letting him off so easily and keeps pushing him towards the classroom door. Just then, two girls enter the classroom from the other door, calling out Jeon. The moment Gamin and Seon hear the name, they immediately turn around. Both of them peek through the window, curious about what's happening inside the classroom. Inside, it turns out the two girls did not come to talk to Jeon. They came to fight her. Watching this, Seon suddenly speaks up. "Lee Ji-yoon is not just anyone. She is Lehon's sister." He looked at Gamin seriously and continues, "I don't think we should bring up the study group with her. Lehon already got beaten up by you, so obviously Jeon will never join us either." Meanwhile, inside the classroom, one of the girls confronts Jeon. "I told you my lunch menu should have been on my desk by the next period." She snaps, "Why was not it there? You completely ruined my mood." She then glanced down at Jeon's desk and noticed a piece of paper. "Wait, is this my lunch menu?" she asks. "You should have just put it on my desk." But before Jeon can say anything, her friend Hwang, who is sitting at the nearby desk, interrupts. "No, that's not the lunch menu," Hwang says. The girl picks up the paper and looks at it carefully. Her expression changes as she realizes this is a midterm preparation plan. She stares at Jeon in disbelief before laughing. "Are you seriously working this hard for school? Don't you know that studying here is pointless?" Her voice grows louder and she starts yelling at Jeon, but Jeon remains completely unbothered, ignoring her. Saying this, the girl's anger explodes and she suddenly raises her hand to hit Hwang. Jeon had no intention of tolerating this any further. As a girl attempted to hit her, Jeon swiftly grabbed her wrist and said, "I told you, if you have a problem, deal with me directly. There's no need to take it any further." But despite her warning, the girl Mihi struck Jeon anyway, causing her to stumble. As Jeon's midterm preparation plan fell to the ground, Mihi smirked and, in an act of pure mockery, began blowing bubblegum and spitting bubbles onto Jeon's midterm preparation plan. At that moment, Gamin arrived, stepping in just as bubble was about to land on the paper. With a quick lick of his finger, he popped the bubble mid-air, catching everyone's attention. Seon, standing outside the classroom, was left in shock, wondering where Gamin had suddenly disappeared to. Meanwhile, Gamin looked down at Jeon's study plan and after a quick glance, remarked, "This is actually really well structured. She would be perfect for our study group." Mihi, however, irritating, saying, "Gamin, defend Leon." And just as she was about to retaliate, another person entered the room, Gyeong. As soon as stepped in, he looked around at the commotion and asked, "What's all this noise about?" The moment Mihi saw Gyeong, her demeanor instantly changed. She immediately dropped her aggressive stance and started acting cute as if nothing had happened. Gyeong, noticing her sudden shift, smirked and said, "Mihi, you look so much better when you are quiet." His words made Mihi's face light up with excitement, completely forgetting the tension from moments ago. Meanwhile, Gamin remained unbothered by Gyeong's presence and continued looking at Jeon's study material. Just as Gamin was about to speak to Jeon, Gyeong suddenly stepped in between them and said, "She is my girlfriend, don't talk to her." But Gamin, unfazed, simply replied, "I am here to talk to Jeon, not you." His focus remained on her because at that moment he was convinced Jeon belonged in their study group. As soon as Gyeong declared that Mihi was his girlfriend, she could not hide her happiness. She was overjoyed that he had called her that in front of everyone. However, instead of staying by Mihi's side, Gyeong shifted his attention towards Jeon, even going as far as placing his hand on her head. Gamin, who had been watching the entire scene, felt something off about the situation, but before he could say anything, Seon quickly apologized and dragged him out of the room. After Gamin left, Gyeong turned back to Jeon with a cold smile. He said, "Did not I tell you not to talk to other guys? He then stepped closer and added, come on, time for your punishment. Hold out your hand. Looking straight into her eyes, he continued, I will hit you 3 times. Or if you want, you can do something cute and maybe I will forgive you. But instead of reacting in fear or playing along, Gyeong simply extended her hand without hesitation. If you want to hit me, then go ahead, she said flatly. Just as Gyeong was about to strike her, suddenly a bubble landed directly on his face. Startled, he paused, wiped it off and turned around, wondering who dared to do that. His eyes looked onto the culprit. It was none other than Gamin. Gamin slowly walked forward and with a mocking smile said, she is your girlfriend, right? That's what you just said. Gyeong's expression darkened and he scoffed, just because you managed to beat up Lehon, don't start thinking you are something special. You are nothing in front of me. Without hesitation, he removes his glasses and carefully placed them to the side as if preparing for a fight. Gamin did not even try to stop him. The moment Gyeong grabbed Gamin, preparing to throw him to the ground, someone intervened. A member of the disciplinary committee suddenly stepped in, stopping Gyeong in his tracks. With a stern expression, he said, do you even realize what you are doing? You should not be doing this. Hearing this, Gyeong immediately stopped in his tracks, sighed and backed off. He quickly put his glasses back on and turned to leave. As he walked away, he muttered, I will deal with you later. 10th grade student. After Gyeong left, Gamin took a deep breath and adjusted himself. But as he glanced around the room, he realized that the entire class was staring at him. Every single girl had their eyes on him, and this sudden attention left him completely confused. Not knowing what to do, he quickly left the room and made his way back to the library. As soon as he arrived, Sion looked at him with disbelief. Did you seriously throw bubblegum at his face? He asked. Hearing this, Gamin casually shrugged. I did not even know he was part of the discipline committee, he replied. I just did not want to stand by and watch one of our future study group members get beaten up. Sihon raised an eyebrow and asked, wait, so you are saying she is officially a member now? Gamin confidently nodded. Yes, she is going to be one of us. Just wait and see. As their conversation continued, the library door suddenly opened. Both of them immediately turned to look at it. Standing at the entrance was none other than Hwang. She looked nervous as she approached them, hesitating for a moment before giving them a small wave from a distance. Slowly she walked up to them, and as soon as she took a deep breath and spoke, I am here to fill out the study group application form for Gyeong. Hearing this, Gamin frowned slightly. Why are you filling out the form for Gyeong? He asked, looking at her curiously. Hwang sighed and explained that before leaving, she wanted to do something for Gyeong. When asked where she was going, she revealed that due to her father's job, she was getting transferred and would be leaving soon. However, she insisted that they must not tell Gyeong because she had not informed her yet. She then shared how, in her very first week at school, she had made an enemy out of Mihi just because Mihi had called Gyeongjin handsome. Coincidentally, that was also the day she had spilled water on herself in front of him. Things worsened when Mihi took her money, claiming she needed it for choreography practice, but Gyeong had stepped in and taken the money back for her. Since that day, Mihi has been after Gyeong, constantly making her life difficult. Sion and Gamin then asked her a question, wondering if Gyeong was in this situation because of her. Hwang quickly denied it, saying that it was not her fault. Instead, she revealed that the real reason Gyeong was trapped was because Gyeong had a video of her brother. He used it to blackmail Gyeong, threatening to leak it everywhere if she did not do as he said. Despite all of this, Gyeong never wavered and even helped Hwang gain confidence to speak up for herself. As for Lehon, his involvement stemmed from an entirely different problem. He had taken money from Hanyu but was attacked on his way, leading the thugs to steal it from him. Since the money had already been taken, Lehon was now in deep trouble because he still had to return what he owed to Hanyu. Gyeong had manipulated the entire situation from the beginning. When Lehon, desperate for money, approached him for help, Gyeong agreed, but with one condition: he had to steal something first. With no other choice, Lehon went to a store, committed theft, and brought back the stolen item. Gyeong had recorded everything. Once Lehon delivered the stolen item, Gyeong handed him an envelope filled with exactly the same amount of money he needed, but the same video of Lehon stealing because a tool for blackmail, and to this day Gyeong was suffering because of it. Gyeong never particularly liked her brother, but since he was the only family member she had, she endured all the torment just to protect him. Hwang, watching Gyeong suffer, felt guilty and said, I just want to help her. She will definitely join the study group, but before that, I shamelessly want to ask for a favor. Gamin and Sehon told her to go ahead and ask, and she hesitated before saying, can you delete her brother's video? The moment she said this, both of them went completely silent. Gamin then turned to Sehon and said, you are going to do this? Sehon's eyes widened in shock. What? Why are you putting all the responsibility on me? He protested, but just as he turned to look at Hwang, she was giving him an an innocent, pleading look, making a cute face as if begging for help. The moment Sehun saw her expression, he immediately caved in and agreed. Since Sehun could not refuse, Hwang was overjoyed knowing that Gyeong would finally be free from this burden. Meanwhile, at Gyeong's office, two people were secretly searching for the video that had given him so much power over others. Their goal was simple: to find the one piece of evidence that could make him powerless. As they frantically searched, they finally stumbled upon a USB drive. Convinced that it contained the video, they quickly plugged it in, ready to check its contents. But before they could even click play, Gyeong arrived. The moment they saw him standing there, they froze in fear, forgetting to even breathe. At the same time, back in the library, Hwang was being questioned about where they could find the video. Without hesitation, she replied it must be in Gyeong's office. He would have kept it there, stored in a USB. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. Breaking into his office was not even going to be easy. Sehun immediately spoke up, saying getting inside his office is impossible. Hwang nodded in agreement, admitting, yeah, you are right, but what else can we do? Sehun then revealed an important fact. Gyeong had special approval from the school, granted by the gang itself. With that authority, he could do whatever he wanted inside the school under the fixing bad students. This meant that stepping into his office was not just dangerous, it was practically suicide. Fighting would break out, and no teacher or school staff would intervene no matter what happened. Meanwhile, back in Gyeong's office, he had already beaten up the two intruders, leaving them in terrible condition. Despite their state, he smirked and said, you guys really wanted to see this video? Oh, fine, go ahead and watch it. He pulled out the USB and continued, because I was planning to upload this to YouTube anyway. Sehun, the entire school will see it. Hearing this, their eyes widened in horror. The two immediately jumped up and rushed toward Gyeong, pleading, you promised you would not leak the video like this. But Gyeong simply smirked and replied, only losers keep their promises. I never intended to keep mine. He leaned back casually and added, besides, do you think I gave him that money out of my own pocket? That was his own money. To begin with, hearing this, they were confused and demanded, what do you mean by that? Gyeong, however, just scoffed and said, you don't need to know that much. Meanwhile, the scene shifted back to Hyun, who was still sitting in front of Miss Lehan. She looked at him seriously and asked, you were quite close to Lehan, right? Do you know where he is? Hyun, with an indifferent expression, replied, I was never close enough to anyone to know where they are or are not. Then he frowned slightly and asked, why are you asking about Lehan? Miss Lehan leaned forward slightly and said, I heard that he borrowed money from Gyeong and could not return it, and those were not even his own. That he took that money because of you. He was robbed on the way, and those stolen funds were meant for you. So to recover the money, he went to Gyeong, took another loan and gave it to you, and then at your request, he even came to my house and attacked me. Hearing all this, Hanyu remained silent for a moment before letting out a small chuckle. He then said, is this really why you called me here? I thought you would be more interesting. I have heard a lot about you, but you are not interesting at all. With that, he stood up ready to leave. As Hanyu was about to leave, he casually remarked, some people, when they disappear, should just stay that way. There's no need to look for them. If Lehan never returns to school, just ignore it. His words hung in the air, but Miss Lehan responded, sometimes you could not just give up on things so easily. Meanwhile, in Gyeong's office, tension was rising. The three inside were deep in conversation when suddenly a loud siren echoed through the room. They all turned, tried to figure out what was happening. Unbeknownst to them, Gamin was hiding inside a storage cabinet. As one of Gyeong's men approached the cabinet, Gamin took his chance and leaped out, attacking both of them in an instant. Without wasting any time, Gamin's focus shifted. He was not looking at Gyeong but instead scanning the room for the USB. His eyes finally looked onto it. At the same time, Gyeong noticed where he was looking. A smirk appeared on his face as he said, so that's why you are here. You think you can take it? You would not get your hands on it. For Gamin, the only objective was to retrieve the USB, nothing else. That's why even while getting beaten, he kept his focus entirely on reaching it. However, despite his efforts, he failed to grab it on his first attempt, slipping past but coming up empty-handed on his second attempt. Just as he was about to get closer, Gyeong struck him hard, knocking him to the ground. Gamin lay there unable to move for a moment while the USB remained just out of reach. Gamin was now right next to the USB. Without hesitation, he grabbed it calmly, removed it from its place and slipped it into his pocket. Watching this, Gyeong's smirk faded. You think just because you stole the USB, I am going to let you walk out of here? Instead of replying, Gamin simply smiled, and in the next instant the fight began. Gamin launched a flurry of attacks, beating Gyeong down effortlessly. Despite all of Gamin's arrogance, he was completely outmatched, unable to put up a fight. After After taking a brutal beating, he finally collapsed unconscious. With the opponent defeated, Gamin casually adjusted his glasses, dusted himself off, and turned to leave. But just as he was heading for the exit, two more men suddenly appeared, blocking his way. They glanced around the room, saying their fallen comrades unconscious on the floor, and immediately turned to Gamin. What the hell did you do to them? They roared, charging straight at him. Gamin, however, quickly shut the door behind him, trapping them inside. Meanwhile, from a distance, Sehon and Hwang were watching everything unfold. Sehon's face paled as he muttered, "This just become a huge problem. If two more guys are inside, then getting out is going to be even harder." Thinking fast, Sehon suggested a plan. "Here's what we will do. I will go ahead and you yell at me, curse at me like we are fighting. That way we will create distraction and Gamin can use the chance to escape." Hwang, however, hesitated, looking uncomfortable. Sehon noticed and frowned. "What now? Don't tell me you are never cursed at anyone before." She awkwardly nodded, confirming his suspicion. Before she could say anything else, Gyeong suddenly appeared from the upper floor. She spotted them together and narrowed her eyes. "What's going on here?" Gamin was shown fighting intensely, trying his best to hold his ground. He was not able to fight them off properly, his only goal being to protect the USB and find a way to escape. But the men surrounding him were not letting him get anywhere near the exit. Eventually, they managed to grab hold of him, pinning him down. At that exact moment, Gyeong regained consciousness, slowly sitting back in front of his computer. Gyeong smirked and said, "Did you really think you could stop me? I already copied the video to my computer. Now I am going to upload it." Saying this, he clicked the upload button and the video began processing. Gamin, still struggling, shouted at him to stop, but the upload had already begun. The video was not fully uploaded yet, but it was only a matter of time before it went live. Meanwhile, outside, Gyeong was shown. Realizing what had happened, she found out that Hwang had told them everything about her situation and that these people were trying to help her. This realization filled her with rage. Hwang, sensing her anger, quickly apologized. "I was only trying to help you," she said, her voice full of regret. But Gyeong, her eyes burning with fury, spoke coldly. "Today either they will suffer or I will. I was trying quite just for the sake of that video, but now I need to hurt someone to feel better." Before Gyeong could reach the office, Gamin suddenly came bursting out, carrying the entire PC in his arm while running. The sight of him dashing away with such a heavy machine left everyone stunned. No one understood what he was doing, and before they could react, they started chasing after him. But running with a massive heavy PC was not easy. Gamin was struggling to move quickly, and the men chasing him were rapidly closing in. Gamin was on the verge of being caught. Saying no other option, he held the keyboard at his pursuers, knocking a few of them down. Without wasting a second, he threw the heavy PC towards Sehon and shouted, "Take it and run." Sehon, completely confused, barely managed to catch it. What I am supposed to do with this? Before he could process what was happening, Gamin engaged in another fight, blocking the attackers to give Sehon a chance to escape. Now the PC was in Sehon's hand, but he looked up. He saw Gyeong approaching fast from a distance. Gamin yelled, "Run, just get it out of here." Sehon quickly started unplugging the wires, but before Gyeong could reach him, he grabbed a PC and bolted. As he rushed downstairs, several people began chasing him from below. Realizing he had no other way out, he changed direction and sprinted back up the stairs. Gamin had already told him that the video was inside the PC, which meant he had to protect it at all costs. Dodging and evading his pursuers, Sehon finally made it to the rooftop. Panting, he looked around, trying to figure out what to do next, but before he could think of a plan, Gyeong arrived. Seeing him, Sehon's face turned pale. "I can't fight him," he realized. He instinctively backed away step by step until he was nearly at the edge of the rooftop. With no other opinion left, he lifted the PC and threw it over the edge. "It's over," he declared. "The PC is gone. You have nothing left to take from me." Gyeong laughed coldly. "Then you can go down with it." Just as he lunged towards Sehon, Gyeong suddenly appeared from behind. Without hesitation, she grabbed Gyeong, pulling him back. Her voice was filled with rage as she said, "I tolerated you because of that video, but now I will only be at peace after beating you myself." Without an other word, she started attacking him relentlessly. Sehon stood there in shock, watching Gyeong completely overpower Gyeong. And with that, this part comes to an end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it. Okay, bye bye.